Calvin, it's great to be here. It's a beautiful day today at Sebring. The weather's really blessed us, you know. It's the temperatures. It's just a gorgeous day. We're getting ready to go into what I think will be a beautiful sunset. The fans will get to see these great cars racing at night in the Mobil 12 Hours of Sebring, presented by Patron. And I can tell you, the Patron people are doing a great job here, as the Mobil 1 people. But Patron presented me the other night, too, so they got a great product.
They're taking care of you, huh?
Yeah.
Don, we were talking earlier in the broadcast about when, in the 50s, when Alec Ullman went to Le Mans, came back, said, hey, we should have a big sports car race, and I suggest it should happen in Sebring. Then we spoke about you going to Le Mans and saying, hey, we should have a series based on Le Mans in America. I know that we kind of ask this quite often of you, but as the years go on, do you still think back to those early days?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I mean, little did I know that, you know, just what seemed so obvious to me at the time was really something that was, you know, really historical. I mean, the Le Mans racing, the spirit of Le Mans, you know, people driving in London in a Jaguar, picking up their girlfriend, shoving her in the car, getting on the ferry, driving to Le Mans, putting her out with a stopwatch. He drives the race, puts her back in the car, and drives back to London.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the real days, you know. But when you go there and you see the crowds of people and you see that racing over the 8 miles and the 50 competitors and the whole ambience, and we thought, you know, we need to do that here because sports car racing at that time in the late 90s was having some problems. But it was just an idea, and I wasn't smart enough about it or knowledgeable enough about racing to understand all that would be involved, but the instincts were right, and it's turned out great.
All right, speaking of problems, we'll get back to you in a moment, Don. But Chris, what's going on at Patron Highcroft? Is this the first glitch of the day?
Well, it definitely is the first glitch of the day, and it seems to be a big one. This car has been up in the air for well over a minute. No driver behind the wheel. When the car came to a stop in pit lane and they were going to do driver change, a little bit of smoke came out of the cockpit. So Duncan Dayton just told me they're really trying to take a good look at it to see if there's some type of short in the wiring loom of the car. But right now, just a lot of hands in this cockpit to see if they can find what was causing that smoke. They've got a 4-lap lead right now, but with the car up in the air, that's just giving the muscle milk guys a chance to try and work their way into that lead. And we're just going to have to keep an eye on this one and see if these guys can get back out there.
Cal, can you do a quick lap count on the 08? How long was the 08 out there? Is that still showing on your timing and scoring monitor? Because we heard a brief report there may have been a hint of a left rear puncture on the 08. That's why it died for pit road, or were they scheduled?
They were scheduled. Both cars had run just over 30 lap mark, so I think it was just a scheduled stop there, and Anthony Davison was in just after those guys, I believe.
Very flattering, Don, to have the Lion, the big Lion, come back, Peugeot come back to Sebring again.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, these guys in France, Peugeot, have been dedicated to really building an LMP car. You know, it's been going on for about 4 years now, and they've raced, and they have been the great battle with Audi, as we all know. And they're going to be, of course, the two of them are going to be pairing up tomorrow for testing and getting ready for the 24 hours. So this is their chance. They won Le Mans, and they didn't win Sebring yet, but now's their chance to do it. And I would like to be a little person on the shelf tomorrow watching these two go at it for the next 12 hours just to see what's going to happen in Le Mans, because 24 hours at Sebring in this track,
yeah, that's huge.
It's huge, and you know it's going to be a challenge for both of them, and I imagine that'll be pretty ready for a good battle at Le Mans.
Don, you've had so much success in the GT2 category, winning at Le Mans with the LNT team, and then winning here in '96 with Sebastien Bourdais, one of the Peugeot drivers on board your team that year. Talk about the competition level in that category this year. It's sensational with all the manufacturers we're seeing.
You know, Calvin, it's so great. I'm kicking myself for not being there. You know, you got Corvette, you got BMW, you got Ferrari, you got Porsche. You know, it's just a hell of a class. But this year at Le Mans, I'll say it for the first time, we haven't made any press releases yet, but we will be showing the road car at Le Mans. We'll be unveiling it, called the Abruzzi. And that car, we hope, maybe will be able to race the last race at the end of the year.
Oh, so, that's fantastic.
So
in the GT2 category?
In the GT2 category, yeah.
Home built in Georgia?
Home built in Georgia, designed in Georgia, but as that car goes into the market, it will only be available to be sold at Le Mans.
Fabulous news.
Leaders on pit lane. I misspoke. Anthony Davidson had not made his pit stop. He's 34 laps into this run, and he finally hits pit lane. Is not taking tires, fuel only. No servicing can go on, but one of the things that can happen with the closed cockpit car, you see the mechanic jump on the nose there, is able to clean the windshield. So any driver-related aids and things like that can be done even when the fuel is going in.
Super job by the guy in the white helmet there getting out. Dirk Werner brought that margin in the GT class from first to second because the Racing boys had almost a two-minute advantage, and at the last check, Werner had brought it down to 1 minute 40 seconds. So he had taken virtually 20 seconds out of the Ferrari during his stint. Sensational job for the young German.
That really is. That relates to about 3/4 of a second a lap on average. About a 30-lap run these GT2 cars are going on their 90 litres. And here we see the Risi Competizione car in also. Driver change going on here. I think it was Kaffer jumping out. This looks like Jamie Mello getting in the car. Essentially the team leader now for many years. 5th year with Risi. Just always gets the job done.
You will often hear us say if there's major work that needs to be done on a car, go behind the wall because you can get more hands on the car. There's only a limited amount of personnel on pit road. Car 1, the Patron Highcroft prototype, has been handed a penalty. Too many people over the wall working on the car.
Wow, that's rare. Crew led by Robin Hill. They're typically on top of things like that, but sometimes you get in a scramble and one of the mechanics just kind of doesn't think it through and suddenly think he's going to help and dive in there, and penalty is assessed immediately.
Don, new team to the series, Extreme Speed with Scott Sharp and his boys, his organisation with the support of Patron. Pretty impressive.
Well, you know, Scott's a great competitor, you know, kind of an icon in sports car racing. Patron, as we know, has come into racing and have been supporters of and sponsors of teams, as this one and Scott Sharp's team, and also the LMP2 car. But these guys are just unbelievable, and you see Patron everywhere you go. I saw it in my dreams the other night. It's really good stuff, and they have special qualities, and we're glad to have them supporting us. And you know, it's not to say that you should be drinking and driving. That's absolutely not the case. But the fact is that for a recreational evening and staying away from the car, they're the people to have as your host.
I know you've got to see so many people, shake so many hands, get so many photos and sign some autographs. Thanks for sparing a little bit of time for us. Dr. Don Panos, the founder of the American Le Mans Series. Exciting news too with the Abruzzi coming along, built by Panos Motorsports Group. A little later in the year, we'll keep our eyes out for that. Thanks, Don.
Okay, take care, guys. Thanks, Calvin.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Lee.
We look forward to the remaining 3 hours, 22 minutes. We've got to go away to a break. The work continues at the Patron Highcroft squad. I want to remind you about efficiency and environmental impact coupled with world-class endurance racing provides the perfect competitive platform for the Michelin Green X Challenge, a race within a race at all American Le Mans Series events this season. The series is home, the home, for alternative fuels and other green technologies. You can follow what we're talking about, the Michelin Green X Challenge, at AmericanLeMans.com. Away for a quick break. Brian's up next.
58th running of the Mobil 1. 12 hours of Sebring continues. We talk about the history of this facility and of this race. Fitting that the new P2 leader is that car right there, the number 6 on the 50th anniversary of Porsche's first win here at Sebring back in 1960. 18 overall wins, 65 class wins. That is remarkable.
That is a very special record. 205 top 10 finishes. Can you believe that? Between 76 and 1988, 13 consecutive wins here at Sebring. That is tough going on this rough racetrack.
Well, we promised you that 12 minutes after the hour, we bring you a recap every hour That's what we'll do right here. At the drop of the green, we've already talked about it. The Peugeots hammer away. That diesel V12 says, see ya, boys. But hey, the Aston Martin, the Drayson Lola, they weren't to be left behind without racing of their own.
And then in GT2, this is Wolf Hensler in the number 17 machine, taking the lead from Jörg Bergmeister. He held on for about 13 laps. Tires started to fade just a little bit, but a very impressive performance.
And Emanuele Pirro may have been out of a prototype for a year or so, but certainly didn't forget how to race one.
No, he stuffs it down the inside of Adrian Fernandez. Problems for the Jaguar early in its development curve. Paul Gentilozzi and the boys will be severely disappointed they didn't see more green flag running here today. They will bounce back.
Talk about disappointment. The Dyson Racing Team, their white and green and yellow BP-sponsored Mazda-powered Lola, they had big hopes, but an electrical problem and a fuel or a oil pump problem put them behind the wall for a while. And then we have a first full course caution.
Number 11, Joel Feinberg here has an off. A little bit of damage to the front end. The car did return to action later in the proceedings.
Talk about action in the proceedings. The GT battle has been spectacular all day long. Porsche and Ferrari in there as well, but right now, during this portion, it was all BMW fighting with the Corvettes, then fighting with the Risi Competizione Ferrari, and they're fighting their way to the front even as we speak. Speaking of fighting back, Chris Dyson, the Dyson Group, they get that oil pump fixed and they get back on track.
They do, and they've been putting in some pretty impressive laps, and they're going to just try and see if they can get to 70% today, score some valuable points in this championship.
Dirk Werner, with a very uncharacteristic mistake, right out of the pits, gets to the third or fourth corner, locks up those cold tires, and off he goes.
Yeah, Bobby Rahal was not impressed with that move. They got away with it. He didn't have to return to pit lane, just continued.
Talk about not getting away with something. Check out the normally perfect Corvette pit stop. Not so perfect this time.
Oh, they got it all wrong there. The car was sent. Jack Magnussen had just jumped behind the wheel of the number 3. And Manuel Collard in the 4 was coming into his pit box. Just bad communication there. Huge mistake. It's really taken them out of the running in terms of overall winning their class in GT2 here today. So that will be a big disappointment for the GM gang.
And the number 3 car had to serve a penalty as well. Talk about a little added insult to the injury. There was damage to both Corvettes, extensive damage. In fact, the left front of the 3 had to be replaced. The 4 went behind the wall for a while, and an alternator problem for the Drayson Racing Team in LMP1.
Yeah, this car has been very, very fast all day long. The fastest of the petrol-powered prototype machines, a little bit quicker than the Aston Martin. Alternator problems didn't cost them too badly. They got the car back on track, and this car has really dominated things in the LMPC Challenge class. Driven by Christophe Bouchou, Mark Wilkins, and Scott Tucker. They went under the hood here, I think just to scrape out some tire build-up, but when they were doing this pit stop, made a couple of pit stop infractions, cost them 2 stop-and-go penalties, lost the lead briefly to J.R. Hildebrand in the Genoa Racing number 36, but shortly thereafter, he makes a little error coming through the high-speed S's.
So uncharacteristic to see J.R. Hildebrand make a mistake like that, if indeed it was a mistake, because I don't think we're still quite sure what happened with the 36. That brought out the second caution, and on the restart, once again, the Peugeot up front. Goodbye.
Yeah, Bourdais just takes off here, and there we see the battle right behind. Big throng of GT2 cars going down into turn 1. BMW takes that point.
Talk about a throng of GT cars. Check this out, down into the hairpin. Jamie Mello gets the best of Jörg Bergmeister in the 45 and gets on through, picks up the position on the restart.
Yeah, that Ferrari has been awfully strong all day long, but this was a mistake here, I believe, by Jimmy Bruni. Yes, Tracy Krohn didn't see him, but putting the car in that track position, you're just asking for aggravation, and they were very, very lucky there was light damage to this Ferrari.
They're lucky that aggravation is all they got. Talk about aggravation, not only for the boys at Falken Tire, where they lose that wheel, but what about for Jörg Bergmeister, who collects it? That was the second time that right rear wheel had departed, and it got a hold of the left rear of Jörg Bergmeister's Porsche. That sent him to the pits, but even worse than that, pit lane was closed.
It was closed. We were under caution, so we had to sit there. They couldn't service the car, and the pit lane didn't open immediately the next time by. They lost 3 laps with this problem. This is really a disaster for the championship winning team from last year.
And then problems for Highcroft Patron Racing. Typically, we don't see a problem for this car. He has the problem, been sitting on pit road for a while. It took a long time to get it sorted out. And in the meantime, the lead in the Prototype 2 category changes, and the 6 takes over the lead. Take a look at the leaderboard. Here is the LMP1 category right now. The Peugeots out in front. We've talked about that. A good run for the petrol-powered, the 007, the Aston Martin. Harold Premat behind the wheel right now. And in P2, we just talked about it. The problems for Pagenaud have kept that number 1 car on pit road. And the Muscle Milk team, Klaus Graf behind the wheel of that Porsche RS Spyder, takes over the lead in LMP2. What about the brand new LMP Challenge class? Mark Wilkins up front in one of the Level 55 Motorsports entries.
Yeah, he's pretty pumped up getting this one-off opportunity with the Level 5 Motorsports team. Doing a great job, of course, and leads currently from Elton Julian. This was the pole-sitting car in the hands of Gunnar Jeanette. We move on to GT. Jamie Mello at the wheel of the Ferrari, currently being hounded by those two BMWs driven by Bill Oberlin and Andy Priault.
Wow, can Risi Competizi do it again here at Sebring? And back to the GTC category, GT Challenge. Butch Leitzinger, a very familiar name in American Le Mans Series competition, leads the GTC category. As I said, Risi Competizione, can they do it yet again? They've got a stranglehold on this in GT2. We'll find out.
I've had 31 years of law enforcement experience, and some of it was as a commander in the homicide division in Philadelphia. I realized to actually move up through the ranks that I needed the formal training to help me attain that responsibility. Holy Family's accelerated MBA program was perfect for me because I can keep working and then I can go to night classes, classes on weekends. The professors were real-world business people, and they managed to bring the boardroom right into the classroom. And as a chief of police, I use what I learned at Holy Family every day.
Back at the Sebring 12 Hours, there is still time to reach into the race and ask the biggest drivers the questions that you may have about this great event. Submit your questions to the Aston Martin Racing Team, Patron Highcroft, Porsche Racing, any of the others, and SpeedTV.com will get the answers. Go to SpeedTV.com, ALMS section, or search keyword Sebring for more information. Man, the sun beginning to set, and it is absolutely beautiful outside. Glowing orange sun beginning to set on the horizon. The temperature is nice and cool. Anthony Davidson in the Peugeot, the 07, still out in front. And I'm still amazed when I watch the driver changes on that team and watch Alexander Wirtz at well over 6 feet tall. And then Anthony Davidson get in. It's like he has to put a Barca lounger in the car in order to make the driver change. Yeah, we understand there's about 10 inches difference in height there. We think Anthony's about 5'6", and Alex about 6'4", so that's quite the change there. It's like the difference between me and Lee, me being the taller one, of course. Of course. Marino Franchitti back on track in the #1 Highcroft entry. Several laps down, in fact 6 laps down being shown on timing and scoring back right now, but at least they are back on track. Jamie, just exactly what was the problem and how did they fix it?
Well, you could certainly see the look of dejection on all the crew guys' face after the perfect run that they had been having up until that point, but it was a shaved wire in the cockpit that was causing an electrical shortage. That was the smoke that we saw when they pulled the car into pit lane. And you know, anybody could have fixed it with the tools that they had in their garage, but it took a pair of scissors, some electrical tape, and zip ties, and a little bit of time on pit lane. But they do have Marino Franchitti behind the wheel and back out. It was 33 minutes that they spent on pit lane trying to get that fixed.
Wow, literally 50-cent parts, a roll of electrical tape, and a pair of scissors that you'd have at home, and a zip tie to just put it all together and hold it out of the way.
Yeah, the bad news is they're now 7 laps behind the Muscle Milk car driven by Klaus Graf right now, so they can effectively go into cruise mode. That is the 6th machine by Klaus Graf, and just try and keep this Porsche running. So really turning the tables right now, because the #1 Highcroft machine has held the upper hand all day long. Now we see Marino back in pit lane, so we have to wonder if there's a further issue with the car.
He'll have to serve a penalty. Remember, Cal, he had those extra crewmen over the wall, so now he's going to have to go to the end of pit road and sit there for a minute.
Yeah, that's right. They forgot about that. It happened so long ago.
Oh, only 20 seconds for that infraction. So only 20 seconds at this point in time. But remember, he'll have to shut the engine off, sit for 20 seconds, and then refire it and go. Anytime you come to pit lane, that is a requirement. The same goes true on pit stop. So Marino Franchitti sitting there. See the official. And I would imagine sitting there in the car as he holds his hands and watches the stopwatch. It seems like an eternity. 20 seconds might as well be a minute for Marino Franchitti. Fires it up, and off he goes.
He has done a stellar job. I have to say that Marino Franchitti is really very, very impressive in these high downforce prototype machines. It really seems to suit his driving style and his abilities. He has been really fast this weekend, and he's going up against Simon Pagenaud, David Brabham, 2 of the very, very best, and they chose to put Marino in the car for qualifying, thus saying something.
All right, it's quite an honor, and I know you and I had spoken about this before, and it's not like Marino has done a bad job in GT cars that he drives. He just seems to excel when you get into a sophisticated car like this, like we said, that has a lot of downforce on it. But the other thing to remember, he ran a P2 car all last season, so he is used to the horsepower and the fact that you have to drive that car and roll the speed through the corners, where Pagano and Brabham are used to that power of the P1 prototype.
That's a great point.
Working his way back around right now, the sun beginning to set. And there's a look at your leader in the LMP2 category, the number 6, the Porsche RS Spyder. We talked about this earlier. This RS Spyder does not have the direct injection, so not quite the horsepower that we've seen in years past. But for Greg Pickett, I'm sure it doesn't really matter right now, Jamie.
No, they don't have the horsepower, but they do have Lady Luck on their side. Greg Pickett now leading in LMP2. How durable is this Porsche RS Spyder?
Well, you know, Porsches in general are pretty famous for that. You know, that's one of the things we love about this car. It's superb engineering. And so we're just, you know, they're built to go the distance. So we'll just see, you know, this is a very, very difficult racetrack. Tough on equipment, tough on drivers, very difficult in traffic. There's a long, long way to go. So we're not counting any chickens yet. That Highcroft outfit is really, really tough. That driver lineup is second to none, frankly.
You won here in 1987 in GTO. How is the track different now compared to back then?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed that immensely back then. It was a big Chevy and Ford rivalry, you know, and I was there with Pratt and all of those guys from Chevy, and we were duking it out with Roush and Pruitt and guys like that, you know, and it was, so that was immensely satisfying. But, you know, if we could bring this little gal home, it'll be a big moment.
So why come back to the American Le Mans Series now?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Why come back to the American Le Mans Series to race now?
Well, I think it's just tremendous racing. They're fabulous cars. I think it's good for our brand. You know, we like our brand is a premium brand, and it's and I think this is a premium series, and I think that they really go very well together. We're just very, very pleased to be able to compete at this level with this kind of international competition. It brings out the best of us, and that's why we do it.
He said it. Sebring is a very difficult place to race, and it's always full of surprises. But good luck.
Thank you so much.
Always full of surprises, and you could hear the emotion in his voice. With 3 hours left, problem for the 40 car, you could hear his voice crack when he said to win this thing would be so special.
Well, it really would. I mean, especially in any driver's career. But Greg is 62 years old. He's won Trans Am races in each of the last 4 decades. So he's had so much success, but he's certainly seen a lot of great opportunities passing by in terms of a win here at the 12-hour. And it is special. I mean, you want on your resume, even at his age, he's really having a lot of fun now. He's established this new racing team, and he's got his Muscle Milk brand on board. And you know, with Porsche and the American Le Mans Series, it is a perfect fit for him, as he said, and it'd be really special. I mean, to have that trophy on your mantle for the rest of your life is pretty cool.
If you get it done, do you say, I'm done?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think as long as Greg's a realist, and as long as he feels he can be a contributing factor to this race team, he will continue to race. Now, there'll be a point where these cars are just so physically demanding to drive. Maybe Greg will not be able to get the job done any longer. We hope that he stays in the game as the car owner at that point. But I think that's at least a couple of years away.
David Murray back underway, had the problem, but now limping back towards the pit. So whatever the problem was, obviously he still has some type of a problem. You're looking up the racetrack to the exit of turn 1. Wow. Wow. Little fresh from
Steve
Florida
action. That was unbelievable.
So
that's cool.
There's a moving billboard, literally, as it drives around the racetrack, telling the fans, hey, don't forget a little Florida orange juice. So he carries that around the track.
Sweeping the track.
But it must have done some damage to the car. I mean, that is a high-speed section of the racetrack.
It is, and you'd have to think that maybe something broke to cause him to go off the track in the very first place at that high-speed turnout. It was a great catch by David. This team is really in recovery mode after 2 major crashes in the last couple of months, so there are very few spares left. He probably felt something amiss in the rear suspension, I would suspect.
And with the damage from those other accidents, you wonder if there are stress points.
Straight, but I can turn it a bunch, and it moves a little bit, but doesn't turn very much.
That's never good.
It's not like it's limited. It's like this skinny, like a bicycle tire up front, but even less than that.
Interesting. So obviously a problem.
If a broken or something like that, we'll do a full pit stop first, and then assess it. Okay?
It definitely looked like the right front tire was at least low, if not down, Calvin. So while David Murray works to get his Dorn Ford GT back to pit lane, we'll take this opportunity to take a quick break. Beautiful Florida sun beginning to set. Here's a look at your leaderboard. Back at the Sebring 12 hour, the sun beginning to set, and the driver's going to have that sun shine in their face as they head down the back straightaway. They'll be fighting a little bit of glare, but I'll tell you what, look at the facility here. The fans, it is packed. And now the race cars, it is absolutely beautiful. American Le Mans Sebring, who said that? It's time for round 5, ding, ding, ding. The pit crew is up. They'll have to answer the question, who said that?
It's all about this corner, Calvin. Look at this one. He's got a run.
Miller comes over to try and block him, but Jörg Bergmeister, he's right up against the wall. How close do you like it? This is a drag race down towards turn 17.
Comes the Ferrari.
The Ferrari comes back.
It's on the wrong side. It's outside.
Bergmeister has the preferred line. Mello's going to have to do the hard work, and he hasn't got enough. Has he switched on him? He gets the inside run. Race. They touch. They touch again. And Mello will get it. The Ferrari wins GT2. That was hard, tough driving right to the end. And the Racy boys do it.
What a finish. Unbelievable.
What a race.
Spectacular finish, and the quote was, we'd all do the same thing. Was it Calvin Fish? Was it Dorsey Schrader? Or was it me, Brian Till? Which one of us said it? Pit guys?
Ooh, I think I'm gonna go with you, Brian. I think you would definitely do something like that back in your driving day.
Final answer?
Jamie, we're not even married and you're not asking my opinion. But I do agree with you, just because you probably got a better flavor for which of our dodgy characters might say that. Okay, is that what we're going to go with, Brian?
Final answer is C, myself, Brian Till. Let's find out.
Now, Bergmeister with a big lead, no question. Up the inside. Jamie Melo hits him here, loosens him up a little bit, and then pushes him out wide. Well, that was for the win at Sebring, boys. What do you think?
What you got to do. We'd all do the same thing. I know Jorg's disappointed.
Oh, Calvin seems like such a nice guy, and yet...
Oh, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, that just kind of ruined the whole thing, didn't it?
It's the English accent. That's what it is.
And the score is going to change. The booth, well, no, they get a 0, so the booth doesn't score, so it's tied. But the booth has a chance to win it in the final round of American Le Mans Series Sebring. Who said that? Stay tuned. I know everyone is on the edge of their seats. My only question is, does the winning team get a grand prize chosen especially for them? We'll find out after the race, I'm certain.
I missed me on me. I give up.
Yeah, whoever wins gets a trip to Long Beach.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Look at that. All right, back to the racetrack. Anthony Davidson in the Peugeot, still on track. Calvin had to stay in the booth for that just to make sure that the pit guys weren't cheating. As long as Chris wasn't down there on that one, he felt relatively safe. Anthony Davidson, new at the Peugeot camp, has been absolutely spectacular. But as the sun begins to come down, the temperatures are going to change, not only ambient-wise, but track temperature-wise as well. Justin, you told us about it earlier in the heat of the day. What's it like now?
Well, obviously the asphalt, the track surface retains the heat longer than the ambient outside, but the temperature earlier was around 106, then it went down to 98. It's now at 78, 20-degree drop in what, 2 hours? So I asked the Dunlop tire engineer, at what point do they put on the softest of their tire compounds? And he said they expect quite a major temperature drop once literally the sun has gone over the horizon. So it is that moment, isn't it? If they're coming in for routine pit stops, they're probably going on their medium compound, but the softer one of those. And as I said earlier, it really is a very strategic, scientifically based game, but also they've done a lot of testing on these tires in each temperature range, so they know what they're going to put on, but they have to wait till they get there. Again, part of the rolling strategy that all these teams have to employ, because obviously any of the game plan they had maybe yesterday going into this went out the window the minute you have the first yellow or a mechanical or a track issue. So it's a lot unfolding here with 3 hours to go.
As a matter of fact, it's been so unseasonably cold here at Sebring, particularly at night, and I can attest to that having slept out here,
that they sent out this morning an airplane to bring in a load of extra soft tires to run here at night if need be. They would have never been able to do that in years gone by, but it's been so cold. In their low 40s it was this morning and the night before. So that's something a little bit unusual.
Nicholas Manassian in the sister car, the 08 Peugeot. Some 19 seconds behind Anthony Davidson in the sister car in the 07. Just not able to keep pace right now. And if you look at the lap times over the last couple of laps, Davidson on that last lap was about 2.5 seconds faster. So perhaps traffic, there's a lot of it out there. Perhaps traffic making that gap there. But anyway you look at it, Davidson beginning to pull away a little bit. And there's a look at the Aston Martin, the 007, still having a good run. Adrian Fernandez behind the wheel. And for a guy like Adrian Fernandez, Calvin and I were speaking about Marino Franchitti having driven P2 cars last year and how David Brabham and Simon Pagenaud were in a P1 car, having to come down to the less power of the P2 and getting back to that driving technique. What about Adrian Fernandez going from the P2 category not only into a P1 car, but into an enclosed car, a coupe?
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Adrian addressed that issue early in the race and said, you know, it is different. This car has a lot more power than the P2 car. It's not as agile, obviously. And then there is the heat factor with the closed cockpit. You don't have that wind in your face sort of thing. And, you know, until you get back into a closed cockpit, you don't even think about that. Then you get in there and go, wait, it stinks in here. It's hot.
You know, Manuel Pirio was saying the same thing in all the years of driving the open cockpit Audi. He said, I got in it and I immediately realized how good our visibility was when we were driving the open cockpit car, and I got in this one, and it is definitely a challenge. When we head to Long Beach, I would imagine these coupes will definitely be a challenge around things such as the hairpin. As Anthony Davidson continues to hold down the point, Adrian Fernandez having a good run. The fans still here at Sebring. But for the 40 car, David Murray still trying to sort the problems out and get that car back on track. No problems right now for Klaus Graf leading the P2 category. Can he bring home another Sebring victory for team owner Greg Pickett? Well, moving advertisements here at Sebring. You see all kinds of things. That wasn't intentional, but this is, and we'll be right back. Anthony Davidson continuing to lead here at Sebring in the Peugeot, the 07 up front. Nick Manassian in the 08 running second. Then Adrian Fernandez, that is your top 3 overall and top 3 in LMP1 as well. Leader in P2, Klaus Graf in the Muscle Milk car, shared with Greg Pickett and Sasha Maassen. Those are your main prototype categories, and those are your leaders right now. And for the guys at Peugeot, they have not put a wheel wrong for the day and have had a good day, to say the least. But the battle has really been in the GT2 category, or the GT category as we'll call it from now on. You ride on board the 02 entry of Extreme Speed Motorsports. Joao Barbosa behind the wheel right now. Barbosa sharing that car with Guy Cosmo and Ed Brown, and they have had a good run, trouble-free for the most part. And really, that's what that team needs to do, isn't it, Dorsey? You got 2 cars, a brand new team. Go get some miles, get the pit work done, come out of here with a good finish and move on.
Definitely learning as they go, no question about it. And I got to say, this time of the evening, it's so pleasurable to drive. The sun has dropped below the horizon. It's no longer offending, and it gets to be a lot of fun right now.
That 02 Ferrari, that's actually a car that we've seen in the series before. That's that Corsa Motorsports Ferrari that raced a couple of years ago. It is a 2008 model, but it's had the 2010 GTE updates that we've seen the Ferrari, the racing Ferrari guys develop over the last couple of seasons. So we have seen that car before. It's just never looked quite like it does today.
And just 3 positions up the racetrack in the GT category, the sister car, the 01. And that is the car that is driven by Scott Sharp, Johannes van Overbeek for the season, and filling in for the weekend, Dominic Farnbacher, currently running 4th. And I would say to Scott Sharp, if he can walk out of here with a podium finish, and we still have a long way to go, 2 hours and 45 minutes, somewhere around in there, a podium finish would be a home run.
No question about that. I mean, these guys really thrashed to get this team put together, get the cars. They didn't get the cars until very, very late. They had to go through everything, building the car up, etc. And even to get a finish would be great, much less a podium.
Farnbacher, very knowledgeable of this Ferrari platform, has spent a lot of time in it, a lot of time in Porsches as well, but really enjoys this car. And they talk about how good that Extreme team or Extreme Motorsports team is. Extreme Speed. I can't talk again. I've got grapes in my mouth, I think. And the other Flying Lizard entry, the 44, Richard Leitz, another Porsche factory driver, filling in that car with Darren Law and Seth Nyman. They did not have the same problems befall them as the 45 did. And what a freak accident that was to get hit by the tire for the 45. But the 44 having a good run right now, running 6th in the GT category. Leitz putting some good lap times in right now.
You know, the Lizard, Flying Lizard group, the whole team really has struggled all this weekend trying to get a handle on this car. I don't know. You know, normally they unload and they're not spot on, but they get it right really quickly. This time they've struggled a little bit.
They did struggle a little bit with some grip early on in the week, but one interesting thing about Flying Lizard, so they are running the E85 this year. The number 44 car that we're watching, they actually tested the fuel at Petit and Laguna last year, saw absolutely zero drop-off in performance. So both teams decided to run the E85 fuel for the 2010 season.
I think the biggest drop-off in performance for the Flying Lizard team was trying to come to grips, pardon the pun, with that new rear tire, and that has been the biggest problem for them for the weekend. A little further back down the racetrack, the other Risi Competizione Ferrari entered with Krone Racing. Eric Vanderpool behind the wheel right now, and Eric certainly knows how to get around this Sebring circuit. He's won overall here twice before, once in a Ferrari 333 and once in the old Riley and Scott Mark III back in 1996.
Great to see Eric still really enjoying his driving career this late in it. I mean, he and I were talking the other day, and he asked me, you know, do you ever miss the driving? In my particular case, I said, no. He goes, I don't know that I could ever not just drive. You know, I just love it so much still. So, I mean, that enthusiasm is awesome as long as he's been in this race car.
Well, he competed in the very first Petit Le Mans event. He's driven over 75 different types of cars and over 100 different circuits in his career. So when you talk about the longevity, and he truly still thoroughly enjoys it. You see him on the race weekends, always has a smile on his face, always has that leather kind of cowboy hat on, and, you know, he just loves coming to the racetrack.
His teammate Tracy Crone also always has a smile on his face, and I noticed more so this weekend than in years past, and I asked him about it, and he said, you know, I've actually taken a step out of my business life, and I'm actually just focusing on racing right now. Normally when I would get out of the car, he said that he would be immediately on his BlackBerry looking at work emails. This year, he's just taking it one step at a time. He wants to actually learn this car. He wants to enjoy it. He's worked his whole life to be able to come out and race these cars, and that's exactly what he's doing this year.
The real truth is the oil's back over $85 a barrel again. He's not tricking me.
And he does enjoy driving this Ferrari, and I was talking to the guys on the team about it the other day. It's got a nice rounded performance curve. It's not knife edge. You can make small mistakes and not pay big prices. So I think that's one of the reasons that these guys, the Pro-Am drivers, thoroughly enjoy it. Obviously, Eric Vanderpool, a full-on professional throughout his career. I think the interesting thing about his victory in 1995 here is that he actually drove 2 cars, and he finished 1st and 4th.
Did he get paid for both?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you finished on the podium in each one, that would be the only thing that could be any better. Let's go to the 69 car. See the sign being held up right now?
Well, it's about to pit. You can see right here. Usually, when you see that sign like that, it means that the radio communication is not working. The guy's hanging an old-time signboard over. They're asking also that he be black flagged by the start-finish line, because they need to get him in to get a pit stop right away, and the radio's not working, and he hasn't seen the signboard yet.
Maybe he's just having so much fun he doesn't want to come in.
Well, that happens too. We'll know in a minute.
The Works 2 Racing Porsche. Rodriguez out on the racetrack right now. And he's an interesting guy. He is a fund manager. He was voted best fund manager of our time in one of the financial magazines a few years ago. And you talk about somebody who has worked all their life and now is enjoying what it is that they've earned, and that is Robert Rodriguez, and he does a pretty good job.
Let's see if he goes in. Looks like he is. Yep, he got the message.
Got sorted out. Yep, he is in. So whether he saw a black flag or he saw the signboard, he has made it to pit road.
By the pit stop, he will lose his position. And look, he's the very first pit in, which is kind of awkward. Look at him
waving.
He's frantic inside.
I don't know what that's about. Tell if he's saying, I can't hear you, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. But obviously frantic, as you said. The 80 car going to take the position from him. That's Ricardo Gonzalez in the 80. And the 80 is another one of those Alex Job Porsches. 3 of them, and they qualified 1, 2, 3. And it just goes back to show you that problems for the 89.
The driver is out of the car. This could bring out the full course caution. That's quite extraordinary for the driver to jump out in the middle of what looks to be just a spin, but I don't see any damage. Obviously, the car might have shut down, but with the driver out and it's sitting there, it could be
Yep, you called it, Dorsey. Full course caution. David Ducote out of that LMP Challenge car. Obviously has lost the fire. Putting the steering wheel back on, and you see the double yellow flag. So 4th caution of the day. And let's take a look.
This is going down turn 7, the hairpin. Oh, boy. Well, no, you know what? I think it did just lose power completely. No.
He spins at the exit, but I mean, a harmless spin. Although the guys were telling me if you spin one of these cars and they roll backwards and you leave them in gear, the engine will begin to fire in reverse, which creates a problem. So maybe that's what's happened here. David Ducote putting the steering wheel back on, out of the car. Anyway, we look at it though, a problem for the 89. So we'll take a quick pause here, but make sure that for the 2010 American Le Mans Series races that are featured on Best of XM Satellite Sirius Radio throughout North America, you can catch those with John Heindahl and the Sirius Radio team providing commentary. 12 Hours of Sebring will be aired by both XM on channel 245 and Sirius on channel 127. So check out AmericanLeMans.com for the schedule of air times throughout the season. We'll take a quick break. There's a look at your leaderboard and the 5 classes that we have running here. Sasha Mawson has a smile on his face in P2. We'll see if it stays in just a couple of hours. Under full course caution here at Sebring International Raceway, the 12 Hours of Sebring. Saw the problem for David Ducote out at the hairpin. That LMP Challenge car did not want to refire right now. Corner workers trying to push it out of the way, trying to get it refired, but it looked like perhaps the under tray dragging on the ground, and pit road is about to get very busy. We see the number 62, the Risi Competizione Ferrari, driving down pit road, the Corvettes as well. The 08 and the 07 hit pit road at the same time.
Both BMWs as well, 90 and 92 both in.
Now, for the battle in GT, this is going to be important. Bill Auberlen was probably close to a half a lap behind the number 62 before this full course caution. While there will be many cars in between them on this restart, does help close the gap a little bit.
No question about that, and they're both back on good fuel and good tires again, so the race will truly be on in GT. 90 seconds was the split, but of course now, depending on how they come out of here, there's the 62.
Jimmy Bruni getting in behind the wheel of the 62 car, I should say.
92 jumps the 90 on the pit stop. Both BMWs back on. Actually, 92 was leading, so he just got back in line. But both BMWs now fueled and underway.
Not sure if that was Milner did, and the 62 hasn't left pit lane yet, so we just had a lead change in GT on pit road. So Jimmy Bruni, that stop taking a little bit too much time. This will be interesting on the restart. 2.5 hours to go in effect. Basically the length of an American Le Mans Series event. We've got one more race to go, basically, before the checkered flag. It is going to be on when this green flag comes back out.
Well, and for Bruni, it's double trouble time because not one, but both BMWs jumped in on that pit exchange.
Yeah, but they would never make it difficult on the racetrack. Teammates would never. No. How wide can a BMW get?
Well, they're pretty wide.
Can it stay wide for 2.5 hours? That I don't think. But this will be interesting. Each of these cars will have a couple of more pit stops. That's opportunities for the teams to make a mistake, and obviously 2.5 hours on the racetrack for the drivers to get the job done and not make a mistake either. While the pace car lines up the field and the rest of the pit stops get taken care of, we'll take this opportunity to take a quick break so you don't miss any of the racing action. And right after this, we'll come back to Sebring International Raceway for the 12 Hours of Sebring. Pit stops continuing here at Sebring International Raceway for the 58th running of the 12 Hours of Sebring, under caution yet again. So pit lane quite busy indeed. You see the Extreme Speed Motorsports team on pit road. Looks like a brake pad change up front. That is the 0-1 car, so that was the higher placed of the two team cars. Right now, we also understand that the 62 went through a brake change. Justin?
Yes, it was actually, I think they deliberately stayed out a lap longer than the Corvettes and the BMWs just to gain track position and obviously create a less busy, track position in this situation wasn't directly relevant, but it does mean you have an empty pit lane when you come back in, which takes the pressure off, and it's a pretty intense environment. So it's very unusual that they should be doing the pad change. I was told quite reliably they didn't think they were going to have to do that. But again, this is the first race of the season, new car, new team, and I guess it was something they probably didn't factor in. But a lot of preparation, they got everything ready to go, so they're doing it, and I'm sure that it's unfortunately a factor now in how they're going to finish.
Well, and I was told the same thing about the brake changes on the 62, that they wouldn't need it. But remember, this F430 GTE weighs 100 kilograms more than the version last year. So that additional weight, even with the bigger tires, is going to put stress and strain on all the components, especially the brakes, because you got to stop that extra weight.
As well as the bigger tires add traction to the braking zone, so you can brake at a higher level of braking.
Well, the field gets sorted out behind the pace cars. We talk about the 5 different classes this year at the 12 Hours of Sebring. Let's take a look at them again and remind you, the LMP1 class.
600-700 horsepower, you see right there. Top speed here is really about 195 miles per hour.
But when you get to Le Mans, it'll be well over 200.
Absolute.
So that is the P1 class. A class very similar to it indeed is the LMP2 category, both open top and closed top cars in LMP2. A little less horsepower, therefore a little less speed, but they weigh less as well. And on a place like the infield here where it's twisty and tight, these little LMP2 cars are very, very quick. In fact, maybe even quicker than their big brothers.
Here's your brand new class, the LMP Challenge class. This is a Chevrolet V8 motor, 430 horsepower. They all weigh the same, 2035. Top speed, right about 160 miles per hour. And they've done a very good showing while they've been here for the first time at Sebring.
Let's take a look at the GT categories first. The GT class, we see the Ferraris, the Porsches, the Corvettes, the Ford GT that was out there, the BMWs as well, 450 to 500 horsepower. 2,480 pounds, top speed around 160 miles an hour. Once again, you get to Le Mans, they'll go a little quicker.
That's what makes it so interesting. The top speed, all these classes very nearly the same, including this GT Challenge class at 450 horsepower, 2,651 pounds, but again, 155 mile per hour top speed, puts them all there together.
Well, the other thing about the GT Challenge class, no big fenders, no big wide tires, so a pretty nice narrow little car. It's going to get down the straightaways very quickly, and there's a look at the average lap speeds from qualifying. You can see the P1 and P2 cars really not that different, and even down here in GT and GTC, you can see not a lot of difference on the average lap. And you got to remember that with the GT cars, bigger, wider tires means higher cornering speeds, but for the GT Challenge cars, a narrower wheel and tire package, less aerodynamic devices mean they go fast down the straightaway. Jamie?
One car that's still in pit lane, Brian, is the number 4 Corvette. I know they're already back behind, but it's kind of interesting to see all the trouble that the Corvette squad's having here at Sebring with this new GT2 car. But this is a production-based car, and the issue that they're having is that their headlights were out. And just like the car that you would buy at the dealership, if the headlights go out or you have to change the front end of the car, the whole thing has to come off. It's not like prototypes where the nose is just clipped on. This is actually a structural part of the car. They had to take several pieces off in order to get it, so it's going to be quite a lengthy stop for him again.
Well, this is going to be a Sebring that Team Corvette would very much like to forget. A lot of different problems, and it's a teething situation, no question, just like Jamie said. So it's amazing, that as you build a new car, even though you're very, very close to what the last car is and not exactly the same, things happen.
And you get a ticket if you drive at night without lights.
yeah, you do.
All right, back on board the 62 Racing Competizione Ferrari, leading in GT2. We were talking about perhaps that the BMWs had leapfrogged, and that's really not the case. The BMWs had gotten to pit lane before the 62 did, because they were about a half a lap behind. So they've gotten out ahead of the 62 like we called, but they've gotten back around. They're about a half a lap behind. So the 62 still holding down the lead. We were just a little bit confused when we saw them leapfrog the 62 in pit lane, but it was because they got there just a little bit quicker. So in GT, it's still the Ferrari, the number 62 Risi Competizione Ferrari, then Tommy Milner in the 92 BMW, then Andy Prio in the 90. But I keep saying, look back to last year, 2009, the results that the BMWs had or didn't have, depending on how you want to look at it, and look what they've done this year here at Sebring. It really gives you a little foreshadowing for the remainder of the season. Just how strong will they be? And we're about to find out, because we're going back to racing with 2 hours and 23 minutes left here in the 12 hours of Sebring. And here we go, down into turn one. The car that gets there first, the number 8, the Drayson Racing Lola. That V10 Judd in the back, Emanuele Pirro behind the wheel right now. Pirro, so much experience here at Sebring, especially at nighttime in a prototype with the closing speeds that you have. I would think he's the guy you want in the car.
I was about to say, the night really differentiates the drivers from the standpoint of some guys' eyes are better at night than other guys' eyes. Some people are more comfortable at night than other drivers are. There's specific night drivers that just happen to like this type of scenario, and that's who you want to put in right now. It will make a huge difference in lap times. It's not easy driving around here at night, because one of the big distractions is the infield. All of these cars, we've talked all day long about how many fans are out here. Well, look at all those car headlights and stuff there on the infield, and understand they're on the same plane. Since there's no hills in Florida here, those are on the same level as the race cars. So when you see headlights, is it coming at you? Is it a race car spun out, or is it somebody in the infield? It makes it, this racetrack, the hardest I've ever seen to drive at night.
Campfire smoke, warm in the day, cool at night. You'll get fog. All of that will come into play, and there's plenty of time left. And speaking of time left, the number 1 car was on pit road, did a driver change during that full course caution to get David Brabham back in. So they were a little concerned that he wouldn't have enough drive time. Brabham, very, very good in the nighttime. How good? In fact, he's made up a lap on the number 6 car. So Brabham with the hammer down, really trying to get the job done. And with 2 hours and 21 minutes and change left in this event, it is far from over.
Oh, no, not anywhere near over. You talk about campfire smoke, that's something that got so abusive here at Sebring, it's no longer allowed. The only fire you can have now in the infield is that of a barbecue pit. Also makes some smoke, though.
I was going to say, unless there's a couch that happens to catch on fire. Emanuele Pirro flashes through turn 1 in his Drayson Lola Judd. And we'll continue from here at Sebring with just over 2 hours and 20 minutes left in the event. Almost the length of a regular American Le Mans Series event. So anything yet can happen. We'll be back right after this. Back at the Mobil 1, 12 hours of Sebring. It's 12 minutes after the hour of 8, and as we promised, 12 minutes after the hour, we're going to bring you the update. So if you've been out of the house having a little bit of dinner, let us catch you up on what's been going on. We'll start from the drop of the green, as we always do, and even now, the Peugeots still led from the drop of the green, as expected, down into turn 1. But once again, Adrian Fernandez in the blue and orange Gulf liveried Aston Martin, he wanted to fight as well. And talk about fight, GT.
Wolf Hensler really gave us a good going with the Falcon Tire Porsche early on, and that GT battle turned into quite a war.
And Emanuele Pirro in the green Drayson Lola with the Judd Power in the back. He's been out of an LMP1 prototype for the last couple of years. He has not lost a step. Paul Gentilozzi, unfortunately, has lost a motor.
Yeah, he cracked a cylinder head. That car got retired very early on in the going, and not a great showing for its first time out here.
Problems as well for the Mazda-powered Lola of Dyson Racing. Understand it was an oil pump that had some type of a blockage in it. Good thing about telemetry and fail-safe systems, shut it down to keep from doing damage. And then, speaking of damage, the first full course caution.
Lap 29, Joe Feinberg with his new challenge car, cold tires up into the wall there, brought out that caution.
They would get that car back out, but in GT, it was the BMW that was fighting hard with several different makes, including the Ferrari, fighting through turn 17. The Ferrari has been in the lead ever since. Meanwhile, back at the Dyson camp, they get their oil pump sorted out. Chris Dyson takes the Lola Mazda back on track.
Yep, and that car is still running. Now watch this, a scary moment for the pits, something you very seldom see, big crash.
Man.
The two Corvettes get together, missed call on the radio, and that pretty much ruined their race.
Not only do you seldom see it, but you certainly seldom see it with Corvette. To add a little insult to the injury, a penalty for the number 3 car, so he'll have to serve a little stop and go. And then alternator problems for the 8. Alternator problems.
Yeah, and that could be a result of the rough circuit here. Alternator failures are pretty common here at Sebring.
rattles just about everything apart. The 55 car, the level 5 motorsports entry in the LMP Challenge category, who's actually still your leader. Little check back in the engine compartment with Christophe Bouchou behind the wheel, just making sure that everything was okay. But during those stops, a couple of boo-boos. When you're new to the series, you need to make sure you know all the rules. 2 penalties he actually had to serve, one after each lap. So he had to serve a penalty, go out, come back in, serve another penalty. Here's a big penalty for J.R. Hildebrand.
J.R. Hildebrand, just the car breaks free on him and has a big impact with the wall. That was the second caution of the day. That car was pretty badly hurt.
On the restart, the Peugeot jumps out in front again, but look at the GT battle back behind him, and look at the rubber clumps bouncing down the straightaway, and it got even busier down into the hairpin as the Risi Ferrari with Jamie Mello behind the wheel gets past Jörg Bergmeister, once again showing the strength of that Ferrari and the improvements that have been done. But a scary moment here for Jimmy Bruni.
Well, he gets together with Tracy Krohn, his teammate. Tracy just didn't know he was there and bumped. And all the way off the racetrack goes the Ferrari up in the air.
And then a scary moment here. For the second time, the Falcon Tire Porsche loses the right rear, and this time it was Jörg Bergmeister who became very unlucky, caught that tire on his left rear, did some damage. But worse than that, the biggest problem was that the pits were closed, so when he had to come to pit lane, not allowed to work on it until pit lane opens again, and that was 1 lap later.
That was a very costly, bad set of circumstances. Right now, this car, the one was in the lead in the P2 category, has an electrical wire that starts smoking in the cockpit. They found it, cut it with a pair of scissors, and then taped it together and tie-strapped it. Took them 22 minutes for a 5-cent part. Too bad.
And they had been absolutely dominant. And then David Murray in the number 40, the Ford Doran GT, a little advertisement for Fresh from Florida as he drives around and shows the fans. Had a problem with the steering. That's what put him off in turn 1. The crew trying to effect some repairs, but steering issues around this racetrack, you certainly do not want those. So now you are up to speed, and we'll go back to the racing action, and you can tell how quickly it has gotten dark on board the number 92 BMW right now, being driven by Tommy Milner. Milner running in third in the GT category.
You know, it takes different drivers a different amount of time to get accustomed to this dark driving. You know, 3 laps, maybe 4 laps. Once you finally get dialed into it, you can actually run faster right now than you did during the day because the engine is making more horsepower, cooler outside, more dense air, and then it's easier, cooler on the brakes, cooler on the tires, really good speed right now.
And that is his teammate right in front of him, Andy Prio, in the team BMW, the number 90. Prio, an expert in BMWs across the pond, as they would say, in the European Touring Car Championship.
It's funny, this front pit straightaway, when you go by here, it's like a little city. You go by there, all the lights are on, everybody's happy, everybody's doing stuff. Then you go around a couple corners, and it's out in the middle of nowhere you go.
See the under tray beginning to rub a little bit. You know, over 12 hours, we talk about suspension settings and so on and so forth. Shocks get worn, springs get worn around this place. They lose their spring rate a little bit. They've gone over the bump so much. So everything beginning to wear out a little bit now. While the track gets better, the air gets cooler, the engine produces more horsepower. That entire car is beginning to get a little bit tired, isn't it, Dorsey?
And you feel it get tired too. I mean, it gets what we call sloppy. It just doesn't have the crisp edge it had to it when you started the race. It's got more roll to it. Like you say, a 700-pound spring might now just be a 675 or a 680. Might have lost its tension.
BMW's chasing this man right here, the number 62, the Risi Competizione Ferrari, Jimmy Bruni behind the wheel right now. Bruni with that daring move on his teammate Tracy Krohn in the green Ferrari earlier, and I'm sure he thought, I know he sees me because I've stuck my nose in before, but a very busy section of the racetrack, and why take that risk?
And, yeah, exactly. I mean, why do take that risk anyway, except it is your teammate, and you think, well, surely he's going to let me by. But then it reaches out and bites you. There's a blind spot in these cars. There's no question about that. So it's not as easy as just he's there or he's not.
And once again, the experience of that Risi team in endurance racing is spectacular. The 8 car on pit lane, Emanuele Pirro behind the wheel. Just had a little bit of a moment out at the hairpin and had a little bit of contact with one of the GT Challenge cars, the number 32. So checking that car over, let's see. Oh, actually got together with the Peugeot as well. The Peugeot trying to go up the inside, and Pirro kind of the meat in the sandwich. I wonder if Pirro had seen the Peugeot.
Well, all 3 of those cars got together. Let's take a look from this angle.
Wow, that's on board the 02 Ferrari, the Extreme Speed Motorsports Ferrari. Question is, which Peugeot was it? I couldn't tell.
I don't know either. You come in after a situation like that because it's really easy to knock the valve stems out of the sides of the wheels or get a flat tire or any number of things on a bash like that on both sides.
And even with telemetry that will tell you if you have a tire going down, what you don't want at this racetrack, it seems like Lady Luck always tells you that just about the time you get to turn 1. So Pirro in the car right now. Take a look at this. Who's won Sebring and Le Mans, which is a huge feat in and of itself in the same year? Well, Emanuele Pirro has done it twice, back in 2000 and 2007. Names that he can match 2 wins with, or wins in the same year, I should say. Tom Christensen, Frank Biela, Marco Werner. Go back to Dan Gurney, but then look at Phil Hill. Pretty spectacular. He did it 3 times.
And they didn't have Audis then.
Yeah, and they didn't have telemetry, and they didn't have all that tire monitoring that you were talking about. This is a prolonged stop, so you got to wonder, and the engine cover off as well.
Well,
so
they got engine covers off that car too, so they're looking it over pretty good. But in the meantime, they fueled it, and the fuel guy didn't have his visor down, so they're going to get a penalty for that too.
Well, they already lost a little bit of money today with a $1,000 fine. So now it'll be a penalty, and I'm imagining this one will be a pretty long stop and hold here on pit lane. That is the least of their concerns right now. They've got to figure out what the problem is. Interesting, they're looking underneath the back of the car unless the hit was more on the right
Well, you'll
rear.
need to serve a stop and go. We had the goggles up on one of the guys jumping down. Just come back in and do the penalty box stop and go straight away.
Dale White on the radio saying, Emanuele, you got to come back in to do that. And he'll say, that's okay, as long as I know the car's okay. They're not in a big position about throwing the lead away. So do what you need to do. Make sure that the car is right. They'll come back in, serve that stop and go, and they'll be on their way.
You know, as many times as you see that penalty given because some fueler didn't have his visor down, why would you not just have your visor on your fueler guy down permanently? Like JB weld it down or something, you know, instead of the penalty.
But, you know, I mean, you think about those crew guys. It's not just a driver sport. It takes a team to win, and especially here at Sebring, and those crew members want to help, and they are a huge part of victory here, as are the fans, a big part of this event. We'll come back to Sebring with just over 2 hours to go, just about 2 hours and 7 minutes. Take a look at the leaderboard. Hey, we're open. We're going to be open until the checkered flag, and we'll even bring you the stories afterward as well. Stick around. As we return to Sebring International Raceway for the American Le Mans Series 12 Hours of Sebring, it is time for the final installment of Who Said That? And this time, the question goes to the expert commentator. So we're back upstairs with the question. It should be noted right now that if Dorsey Schrader answers this question correctly, he and Calvin Fish will take the victory over the pit lane talent. It is currently tied, and this is indeed the final question. Who said that? Petit Le Mans, remember the deluge. It caught everybody off guard. In fact, some of the best drivers in the world went for wild, wild rides. I can remember Danny Bink saying to Johnny O'Connell, tell me you did not just spin under the caution. The question is, right now, boats might have been handling better out there than cars. Who said it? Was it Patrick Long, Johnny O'Connell, or Dorsey Schrader?
I would go with Patrick Long.
Wow, you seem very sure about that. What's your final answer?
Patrick Long.
Patrick Long, Dorsey's final answer. Patrick Long, can we have the answer?
Right now, boats might be handling better out there than cars, so we'll see if this Atlanta weather gives us a little bit of a chance.
Dorsey Schrader back on victory stand on the top step. He's standing on his chair right now, spraying champagne. And
now it's Diet Coke.
Okay, Dorsey. Now this one I can see you realizing that you didn't say that. You know why?
Why?
Because when it was raining so hard, I know you weren't concerned about the cars on the racetrack. You were concerned about your motorhome.
Yeah, it's floating away down in that creek.
I would also like to point out, gentlemen, that Dorsey, at his slightly more mature age, cannot remember what he says or does.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
has vague recollection of what other people say and do. So
what are you saying, Justin?
I'm basically saying that we should have just made sure every answer was his, and then we would have won this thing.
You would have won it.
Well, I mean, when you eliminate me from the equation, it's a 50-50 shot, you know?
Yeah, we also have to remember he does live down in the Keys, and everyone's like that down there. So.
That's true, regardless of age.
Dorsey will be awarded with a grand prize chosen especially for him at the end of this event. And a free trip to Long Beach. That's exactly right. Well, thanks for playing, Justin. Chris, Jamie, I know you're back in the compound probably watching this right now. Sorry about that. So Dorsey will do the speed report at the end. That will be his celebratory deal. And he can even mention his victory there. 17 car, the Falcon Porsche on pit road. Those problems that they had earlier and with that right rear tire.
Yeah, no hurry here, no panic. So there's something going on that doesn't look too good for this car.
But, you know, I mean, think of this in Olympic terms. And I know we just came off the Winter Olympics, and we concentrate a lot on winners in motorsports and all that. But when you look at the Olympic athletes who qualified just to be there, who did everything that they could and represented their country in the Olympics, every team up and down pit road is pretty much the same. They are there. They're proud of their team. These guys have a tremendous amount to be proud of. Three races last year in the American Le Mans Series, and they never cracked the top 5 in a finish. They start on the front row here and lead early on until they had the wheel problems. Not a tire problem.
No.
But a wheel problem.
No, that's for sure. And this team has come such a long way. I mean, using this Porsche to develop a tire, for that to be started and just now in the second year be able to lead and lead pretty good. It's fantastic.
I think Wolf Hensler and Brian Sellers have a lot to look forward to in this season. Right now, on board the Racing Competizione Ferrari, the F430 GTE, that evolution as he flashes down the back straightaway. That evolution, remember some changes to that car. GT1 rear tire, 6 millimeter wider with the front tires on each side. They got a bigger air restrictor because they took on 100 kilograms extra in order to have those tires, and right now it seems to be paying off. And remember, we talk about the Endurance Kings. They won Le Mans in 2008, Petit in 2008, and last year the trifecta, Sebring, Le Mans, and Petit. For some reason, the endurance races, these guys just seem to excel.
They are very good at it. Now, I'll tell you one thing I'm very impressed with is the lighting on this car. This car really lights up the road in front of it. Now, obviously, our camera probably has a much better draw of light in than the human eye does. But, I mean, if it was like this at night to drive, if it looked this good, I wouldn't have hated it so much.
With 2 hours left to go, though, anything can happen. And you ride on board right now the number 90 BMW. That's Andy Prio behind the wheel, running in second place. And while he's about a half a lap behind, they may need a little help to catch that Ferrari. They're certainly not going to do it on the racetrack unless they get a little help. Another full course caution could certainly bring them back together. You never know. The 62 has already changed brake pads, so a longer stop is probably out of the question, at least for routine service.
What surprises me to some degree is that the BMW was so darn fast in qualifying, sitting there on the pole with a really good lap. But then again, it doesn't surprise me they're not as fast in the race. I think they probably have the ability to turn that little engine up and do a qualifying 2 or 3 lap run, but it won't go 12 hours, and they have to back it down just a little bit. I think that's what you're seeing right now.
Well, just as a reminder about Twitter and Facebook, why not become a follower of the American Le Mans Series? Get the latest news, notes, and up-to-the-minute updates on and off the track. You can find the series at ALMS Notes on Twitter, or check out the series' official Facebook page. Man, you think about technology in the race cars. What about the technology that gets you information these days? You can follow the American Le Mans Series literally anywhere you are. Follow it right here on Speed, because we'll be right back. Safety car out, the full course caution out again at Sebring, and a scary, scary moment for driver and team owner Scott Sharp in the Extreme Speed Ferrari 430 GTCE. See him parked at the end of the back straightaway, and the safety crew around a series of replays. You can see as he comes through the 13 and 14 area, smoke billowing out of the back of the Ferrari, and as he turns through turn 16 onto the back straightaway, it ignites.
That's an oil leak or some sort of an oil line that's come loose, and it's completely engulfed now the engine bay. It's burning off that Lexan rear window, which you saw the guy carrying away. Scott Sharp, trying to ride it down the pits toward pit lane, is going to have to abort that issue and get out of this car pretty quick.
Well, as he drove off the corner, the car still had power, so I know, as crazy as it may sound, he may not have seen the flames just yet, but as he got just off the corner, he certainly did, and he does a great job. That's experience. He sees a cut in the wall and pulls over there, because at that cut in the wall, you know there's going to be safety workers, and indeed, you see the workers beginning to run out. Right across the racetrack is one of the safety vehicles, and you'll see him arrive on the scene very quickly. Scott, great to see him out of the car. Corner worker jumps in with a fire extinguisher immediately, and you cannot say enough about these corner workers. The guys getting out of the truck, that's their job. These corner workers, they're volunteers. They're out here for fun, and that guy jumped into literally a fire, a fuel-fed fire of some sort, with a handheld fire extinguisher and put that fire out.
And you could tell he was trained at firefighting too, because you saw him go to the base of the flame. He didn't start shooting over the top of the car. He went right down to the bottom and smothered the oxygen away from the flames. Really good job by that corner man, whoever that was.
Tell you what, most of these guys out here, SCCA trained corner workers, and you know, they are truly the unsung heroes. They stand on the corners through every practice session, every qualifying session. They flag just like those two gentlemen right there. We couldn't race without them, and you'll see almost every race car driver in the world after the checkered flag go around and wave and give every one of these guys a thumbs up.
This is Central Florida Region SCCA corner crew guys. These are really, really dedicated people. I spoke at their banquet 2 years ago, the Christmas banquet. These guys and girls, I should say, they have worked together a very, very long time. They're dedicated people, trained people, and God bless them.
I mean, that was impressive. We've seen it in the past where somebody jumps out and just sprays blindly that fire extinguisher. That was a big fire, and I can tell you, when you get close to a fed fire like that, whether it's oil or gasoline, I can't even begin to tell you the heat that radiates off of it. But that guy jumped in there with that fire extinguisher and put that fire out. You know, Greg Kramer, who's a great friend of ours and a great friend at Speed. And there he is right there. There's Greg.
Greg
standing
Kramer.
Right there. Wave, Greg. I don't think he can hear us. He sees us looking.
There he is.
There he is waving.
There is our Greg
So when
Kramer.
you're not listening to him, there's what he's doing. He's out there right now. And it's Greg and guys like him that love this sport so much. They volunteer their time to stand out on the corners and work. And quite honestly, they saved that car from being totaled. Great to see Scott Sharp out of the car. Another full course caution, so we'll take a quick break while cars make pit stops. Things get sorted out, and then we'll be right back to Sebring. There's a look at your leaderboard through the 5 classes. Make sure you set Thursday night aside so you can catch an all-new bull run with Bill Goldberg. As the pressure mounts, the competitors begin to crack. And before this leg of bull run is over, 3 teams will face one of the toughest challenges yet. Bull Run, all-new episode Thursday night, 10 Eastern, only on Speed. Cars behind the pace car, scary moments for Scott Sharp. Fire, I know for me, was actually much more frightening than the thought of crashing a car. Certainly, it's one of those things that you prepare for. All that safety equipment that you wear is for those reasons. We talk about the teams and all the work that gets done. Well, what about all those engineers? Where do they work, Chris?
Well, Brian, often we talk about the war wagons, and when you want to see the Mac Daddy of war wagons in pit lane, it's definitely Corvette. This thing is a monster. It was 8 years in the development. It's been in pit lane for 3 years now, and you look at all these monitors up here, 12 different angles around the racetrack. It really looks like our production truck. Our director, Billy McCoy, choosing his camera shots. Well, why would this team want this stuff? Well, think about a NASCAR race. Those spotters on the roof being able to tell their driver what's going on. A road course, you can't do that. So with all these different camera angles, this team is able to alert their driver of something going on the racetrack. Also, these engineers working down here looking at the telemetry from the cars. Well, telemetry is new in GT2. It was thought of in the past as an added expense that maybe teams did not need, but Corvette and other teams lobbied this winter and said, you know what, it is an expense, but it's much more important for us to see a potential failure, a tire failure, a gearbox failure, differential, or engine failure before it actually happens and stop it from happening, and we can see that with telemetry. And then obviously the most important component of the team, the crew. And this Corvette crew has been together a long time. 13 members of this team have been together since 1999. And think about the championships that they've won. It's not just here in the ALMS, it's NASCAR Truck Championships, IMSA GTO, SCCA Trans Am, and the list goes on and on and on.
Who gets to sit up top?
Come on, that's always Doug Feehan.
Feehan used to have a little seat that looked like a bass boat seat, and it swung out kind of over pit wall, and he sat there and surveyed his territory. Doug Feehan, the program manager for Corvette Racing. Starting the wave by on the pace car right now, getting the field sorted out, so we'll be ready to go racing. Look at the headlights through the infield right now. Guys lining up, driving around on the inside. Make sure you check out the fan-oriented paddock pass on AmericanLeMans.com. Go to the website. You'll be amazed at the things you can find out. You can check on drivers and stats and all kinds of things, even get onto the chat room. Right now, crews on pit lanes making the final preparations after this last pit stop. We'll come back to hopefully some good green flag racing. It'll be interesting to see. Will Pierre Caffer and the rest of the Risi Competizione team take another victory in an endurance round? You ride with the young Canadian driver, Mark Wilkins, who's leading the LMP Challenge category right now at the 12 Hours of Sebring, the 58th running of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. Mark Wilkins and his teammates at Level 5 Motorsports, Scott Tucker, Christophe Bouchou, really led this thing from the beginning and have had very few problems. A couple of penalties on pit road, which you might expect. The team coming in, trying to figure out all the rules that exist. This car has run well, and honestly, the entire LMP Challenge category has been a very pleasant surprise. The 45 on pit road. Jörg Bergmeister climbing out. You can see the driver getting in, but these guys, bad luck, ran well early on, and then just a victim of that errant tire that came off the number 17 Falcon Tire Porsche. So they'll do this stop and try to make sure they collect as many points as they can. Justin, what do you have on the 01?
Well, obviously, Scott hasn't made his way back here yet, but he did talk to the team over Marshall's radio, and he said that he felt a vibration, then something let go, and as it let go, obviously the smoke came in, and it did smoke, didn't it, from turn 10, 9-10, and then it caught fire. Now, as we know, Dawes, unless you're really braking hard, generally fires don't ignite in a car until you're under deceleration. That means, obviously, suddenly there's a lot more air to fuel the fire. And it kind of backlogs and comes, and then you get it in the cockpit, and then it really erupted. Now, that was a lot of flame. There was a lot of fluid, flammable fluid. So maybe, what do you think, Dawes? Something spun off, hit a fuel line off, an oil line, something followed by the diagnosis that something broke. What would your conjecture be?
Well, the vibration lets you know that something came loose, and it was probably at the upper end of the engine, something like up by the camshaft tray. Up in the cam tray, if a camshaft broke, for instance, punched a hole through the tray, it would have dumped oil all over the top of the engine. When it got down around the headers, of course, then it would be completely full of oil, and it looked like that. I mean, when it went off, it was really getting after it.
And it was definitely some type of a fed fire, so whatever was burning was there. But when the car stopped, so did the feed of the flammable liquid. So, a lot of times if the engine dies, but the fuel pumps are still on, and it's a fuel fire, it continues to pump gasoline or whatever the flammable propellant is onto the engine, and it continues to burn. That one, as soon as the car stopped, you didn't see any more flame, so that would make me think it's more oil related.
Yeah, it's more like oil, because you shut the engine down, and if it's the camshaft, per se, like I'm thinking about, it would quit the oil spraying around. It would just stop there and lay dormant, and then burn off what oil was left around the engine, which is what it did. Unfortunately, the wind was from the back of the Ferrari, which, when it did stop, blew the flames up towards Scott, in the driver's compartment. He jumped out and got out in time. Pretty scary, though.
But as he was going down the back straightaway, it looked really fast with all that flame coming off the back.
Yeah, lit up the night real good.
It looked kind of like a rocket-powered car. Glad to see he was out of the car, though. In all seriousness, that is the thing that is so scary. Very quick to get out. We were actually watching him come down the straightaway, saying to each other, get out, get out, get out, get out of the car. So good to see that most of the flame stayed in the engine compartment. Onto the front straightaway. We expect to see green here shortly at Sebring. The green flag will wave, and we'll be back. You see Guy Cosmo in the sister Extreme Speed Motorsports Ferrari, the 02, still out on track. working his way around. Pace car now gathering up the field. That looks like it's over in the hairpin. Even for us, as it begins to get dark, really difficult to tell where the cars are. Saw that telltale, very sharp right-hand corner. The lights out on the pace car. There he is through turns 8 and 9. And this left-hand kink where the field is streaming through right now is where John Field had his crash the other day, where they had the suspension failure and the car really did a big tumble down the racetrack. And once again, hope, John, that you're feeling better, bud, and we'll hopefully see him in Long Beach. I know the crew went back and started immediately building another one of those Lola P1 prototypes. It'd be nice to see them back at Long Beach.
Boy, when you talk about totaled cars, this was a complete totaled car. We didn't have any video, but we certainly got these still pictures for you. One of the most horrific crashes we have seen in American Le Mans ever.
The car literally went airborne for a moment. A suspension failure in the back is what they think. That pitched the rear end down and the nose up, and the car then took off and then tumbled down the side. And you see the debris field, and you see the Dyson Mazda driving through it. John did climb out of the car, and Clint went rushing over there, and he said, I jumped over the fence and went running over there, and he was sitting up alongside the guardrail, and he looked up at me and said, wow, that was a big one.
Well,
so it's good to hear him talking afterwards. They strapped him to the backboard, and as fiery as John is, of course, he was complaining about being strapped to the backboard and taken away in the ambulance.
I can relate to that. That backboard thing's no fun at all.
Yeah, but it's definitely necessary.
Lucky guy to escape with minor injuries, bruising and a couple lacerations. Nothing broken.
Well, the good thing is John is built a lot like Lee Diffie. You know, he's shorter, and so he sits down in that car a little bit more, and the car landed upside down in the dirt. So you want to be as short as you can when it comes down on the roll bar like that. If you'd been as tall as Calvin Fish, it might have been a problem. Back to green flag racing. Those two guys, Calvin and Lee, love to give each other a hard time about who's tallest. Right now, the hard time is going to be on the racetrack. Alexander Wirtz in the 07 Peugeot out in front of his teammate Sebastien Bourdais. Remember the drive that Bourdais put in here in the latter stages last year? A great drive until he handed the car over. By Olivia Cannell's own admission, they went with the wrong tire compound. I believe it was Montigny that got in the car and struggled towards the end of the race, but Bourdais was absolutely magic in the dark last year.
Alexander Wirtz darn near ran over the pace car. Pace car was not in the pits when Alexander went to the full throttle, and he passed that pace car relatively early. I don't think they'll do much of any kind of a penalty. There would be no reason for it. But that was an early start.
Peugeot still holding down the point. Wirtz in the 07, and then Bourdais in the 08. Adrian Fernandez running third overall and in P1 right now in the 007, the Aston Martin. Interestingly enough, it looks like Wirtz able to pull out very, very quickly and begin to gap Bourdais. So we'll leave the P1 battle. We'll go back and we'll check with some other contestants in the field, so to speak. Let's check in with GT.
Well, Dave Sims calls the shots on the 62 car. And Dave, right now you've been able to maintain essentially a 9/10 lap lead on the BMWs. Almost an hour and a half to go in this race. How do you not lose that lead?
Well, keeping out of trouble. And, you know, Jamie just had a little bit of tummy trouble, so we pulled him out. So we put Pierre back in now. And Pierre's been doing a good job. We just got to keep out of trouble and keep the speed up, and the last two pit stops got to be like we've been doing all night. That's where we've been gaining all night. It's on the pit stops and the strategy. The engineer's done a super job.
This team is so successful at the Enduros. Le Mans the past 2 years, Petit Le Mans the past 2 years, Sebring 2 of the last 3 years wins. Why is this team so successful at these Enduros?
It's all down to experience and reliability. And if you don't finish, you don't win. So the boys do a hell of a job putting the cars together. Plus, with a few tricks up our sleeve as well at the same time, which we don't want to publicise.
And you got to love a team manager that's concerned when you have some tummy trouble too. Justin, what do you have?
Well, Tommy Milner just got out of the 92 car. Tommy, I used the analogy earlier with your big boss that, you know, last year this Rahal team had all the right ingredients, but maybe didn't put them into the right recipe. But you just said to me that pretty much nothing much has changed, it's just the way you're approaching it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this year we have 1 year on our belt now with the M3, and last year, it took us about a half a season to get the car ready. Now we're here at Sebring again. I mean, it's night and day different from what we had last year here to the car. Same package, Dunlop tires, M3, same team, same drivers pretty much, and now we're here, we're competitive. We got a little bad luck early on with the one yellow, but on pace so far we're great.
I haven't asked anyone this yet. We had a lot of sort of supposition before the race about the different categories. Obviously the Peugeot going by is probably easy, it goes by so fast. But what about the other two classes around you? How difficult is it to gauge whether there's two cars behind, one car, especially as it's got dark?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's not so bad behind you. For me, my biggest problem every stint I've had three and a half stints now, and it's all the challenge cars. Give me a big problem. Just the inconsistencies, and I can expect that. Some new guys to the series, it happens like that. But it's just frustrating for me to have every one of my stints and not have one that kind of just goes smooth. But you get used to it. I've been racing sports cars now for a long time, so I'm used to the traffic problem. But you're right, though. The Peugeots are great to go by, as fast as I do, and the challenge cars are just the Porsche's too fast in a straight line. That LMP car is too slow in a straight line, so we're all kind of one big mix there, and causing some problems. Mostly for them, I think, but also for us sometimes as well.
Dave Sims over at Raceway just said that in order to, Chris asked him a great question, what does it take to get to the finish to keep their lead? And they said stay out of trouble. But you guys are edging into them on pit stops and things. You're really doing a good job there. But it does require a clean run, even for you to stay on the podium.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this Ray Letterman racing team does an awesome job in the pits. They spend so much time back in the shop working on fuel flow in the car and practicing tire stops. They're in the gym every day at the shop, so they really focus on that, and it's shown today. We've made up, I think, one pit stop, 15 seconds on one of the pit stops on the 62 car. So that's definitely one of our strong points. Our pace though today has been great as well. So just one bad luck with the yellow, and if that one thing gets fixed, then we're right in the hunt there. But I mean, both our guys out there right now driving as hard as we can. We're proving right now these M3s are reliable, and we just hope it stays that way.
It is a race to the finish. Good luck. Well done, Tom. Thanks.
I'm thinking that all of these drivers, when their driving career is over, should run for political office because I've never heard such politicking other than listening to congressmen or senators. Take a look at the pits. Dave Sims said, well, we've been beating him in the pits. That's where it shines. Well, here's the total time that these cars have spent in the pits. So Dave Sims and his number 62 Ferrari, the Risi Competizione team, they've all made 10 pit stops, and he is almost a minute more than the 92 BMW and just under a minute from the 90 BMW. So who's the faster on the racetrack?
Well, it looks like Ferrari might be a little bit quicker than BMW at this point in time.
But Tommy Milner says the Porsche's too fast in a straight line.
Well, here's the deal.
Anybody who's running faster than you is too fast somewhere.
The challenge cars are brand new. Nobody knew how they were going to slot into this thing. Obviously, I tend to agree with him that the LMP challenge car is a little bit too slow in the straightaway, and that can be rectified by removing the restrictor that they have in that engine. I mean, that car needs to be faster than a challenge GT car is. And right now, they're running about the same top end, and that makes it very confusing on the drivers.
Mark Wilkins looking nice and calm in the LMP challenge car, leading in the number 55, that level 5 motorsports car. What a great job he has done. A very different type of machine than he is used to driving, and more problems for the number 8, the Drayson Racing entry, that V10 Judd in the back of the Lola chassis. Chris, do you know what's going on?
Well, this goes back to when they had the side-to-side contact with the Peugeot quite a while ago, and you can see there's a little bit of damage on the side pod on this left side here, and that's right where the radiator sits, and the edge of the radiator is right there. So when that Peugeot got into it, it just kind of smashed that radiator a little bit, and the team is looking to try and find a water leak. They don't know if it's in a fitting or if it's in the actual radiator, and what they're seeing is the car just continually loses water on the racetrack. They're having to come back into pit lane every few laps and add water to it. So right now they've just said, let's just bring it to pit lane, see if we need to change out a radiator, see if we mainly crew members in there with flashlights trying to find exactly where it was leaking. So it's going to be interesting. Are they going to send the car back out on the racetrack, or are they going to go into the paddock and maybe change out that radiator? I'm going to guess that they're probably actually going to send it back on the in the paddock, just because they are clipping everything down for the car to be at full speed.
It's always important to check that kind of stuff. To lose an engine because you were in a hurry, it's just not acceptable. And where they place those radiators, the 62 team, they moved that radiator up off the front splitter to protect it. And it may have been a good move after we saw Jimmy Bruni with the flying Ferrari a little earlier. The crews, interesting, looking on. An hour and a half left to go in the 58th running of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring.